All right. Hello, everybody. Today is November 18th, and I'm recording another video. This time, I'm basically following up with what I started with my last video, where I finished reading The Gay Science. And I figured I'm hesitating before starting Zarathustra, and I'm realizing that part of my whole project, philosophical interest in reading Friedrich Nietzsche, is partly inspired by um, my interest in esotericism, Western spiritualism, and prior to getting into reading Nietzsche, I started reading this book, Christian Meditations on the Tarot. Or actually, I always think of it as Christian Meditations on the Tarot, but there's actually the word Christian. Oh, a journey into Christian Hermeticism. It's actually Meditations on the Tarot, a journey into Christian Hermeticism. And the thing about this is I have to admit that I was raised Unitarian, first of all, and that when it comes to Christianity, my on my mother's side, apparently my grandfather came from a Catholic family, but he went atheist and didn't like the Catholics. And then the my grandmother was Russian Orthodox, and then on the other side of the family, it was like people who went to a Protestant United Church, basically, right? So kind of all over the place. But I was raised Unitarian, and the thing about this is that I have an interest. I do an astrology channel. I do tarot. I do divination. I have an interest in esotericism, and the thing is, I thought I was going to give this book a try, and I think approaching this as a person who's first of all not Christian, and there's like there's something about this where there's a certain bias where the guy who does Christian meditations on the tarot, um, our known friend, as the weird studies guys call him, is he's trying to resolve there's a certain conflict that exists between Christianity and people that are into tarot. And this book does a pretty good job of resolving whatever conflict that is, so that if you're the kind of person who likes tarot cards and you like Christianity and you want a system where they're totally integrated together, this is a remarkable good job if that is your goal. Now, the problem is that at the price of resolving that tension, he explicitly makes enemies out of, let's say, the Marxists, the Nietzscheans, the certain people that he identifies as like enemies to his project. And there's something about all of this which sort of, like, by trying to work my way through this book, gave me what you would say, I would say, I don't know what the right way to describe this is, because is it a philosophical problem, or is it a theological problem, or is it an obstacle in understanding the metaphysical mysteries of the universe? I don't know, but I hit some kind of obstacle. And then I was also like taking weird studies courses, learning about philosophy, and I encountered this obstacle too, where I was going to like ask questions about this kind of problem, but I haven't read any Nietzsche, right? So I'm kind of like, I'm already kind of like one of the basically when it comes to reading Friedrich Nietzsche, which I've just finished The Gay Science, so I haven't read the appendix yet. Um, the thing is that what I've noticed is that most of the people that are into Nietzsche have at least like 10 years on me for experience. Like, imagine you're just like you're a newbie, a newcomer, and like you walk into a room, and like everybody who's interested has been doing this for at least 10 years, 20 years. Maybe the old timers have got even more decades of experience. So you're just like a newcomer into an experience where everybody knows. It's kind of intimidating that all these other guys are probably smart, know a lot more about it than you do, and you'd have no. So I have to catch up, basically, right? I have to catch up. So I've been trying to play catch up by reading my Nietzsche, so I'm not just like going in blind, like asking, like, this is basically, I'm going to try to attempt to resolve the problem. Okay, so this is basically the problem comes up for me with the Wheel of Fortune in Christian Meditations on the Tarot. And basically, I'll start here. I'm going to read from Christian Meditations of the Tarot. Um, Three historical personalities have vividly portrayed the idea of the cosmic wheel, although each of them did so in a different way. These are Gautama Buddha, Solomon, and Friedrich Nietzsche. Now, this is something about this is kind of funny, is because I made a bunch of astrology videos recently where I've been talking about the Pentangle album Solomon's Seal, and there's some kind of like, it's just a coincidence that this deals with the Buddha, Solomon, and Nietzsche as this sort of triad. And I'm kind of like, this is, I think that there's like my subconscious is trying to draw me back to like the whole Solomon Seal thing. Maybe they're trying there's some unconscious part that's trying to lead me, give me some breadcrumbs to lead me back to this thing and address this question. So I'm going to try to do that now. So we've got the first, Buddha, told of the wheel of incarnations where birth, sickness, old age, and death repeat themselves endlessly. The illumination that the Buddha had under the Bodhi tree revealed three truths to him: that the world is a wheel of births and deaths, that its movement is fundamentally nothing other than suffering, and that there is a way towards the center of the wheel which is at rest. King Solomon had the experience of the wheel not as that of incarnations, as with Buddha, but rather as inexorable fate rendering all human hope and endeavor in vain. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises anew. The wind blows to the south and goes round to the north. Round and round goes the wind and repeats the same circuits. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is never full. The streams continue to flow to the place where they flow again. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there's nothing new under the sun. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and is striving after the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. I have applied my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I have perceived that this is also but a striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. This is the wheel of existence under the sun, of which Solomon, the wise and sorrowful king of Jerusalem, had a vision. And what practical advice does he give for posterity? What that of supreme despair, as follows: there is nothing better for a man that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment, remove vexation from your mind, and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. It is Solomon's despair which made him into an Old Testament prophet and gave his work a place between the Psalms and the books of the prophets. For Solomon portrays the emptiness, which he calls vanity, of the world of the serpent, and thus sets in relief the dilemma: either suicide or salvation on the part of God, or above the turning of the wheel of vanity there is God. Solomon's despair certainly belongs to the Holy Scripture. He portrays the world without Christ, which, moreover, the Buddha did also. Solomon's sadness is the sighing of creation for deliverance, having become conscious in him. Thus Buddha rightly diagnosed the wheel of the serpent before Christ. Solomon wept over it, but Nietzsche, how monstrous, sang of it. Yes, Nietzsche saw and understood the wheel, the closed circle with no outlet, of the world of the serpent, and he said yes to it. He had the vision of eternal repetition, the eternal return, and he identified it with eternity, although it is the very opposite of eternity. And then he quotes Nietzsche in Zarathustra, "Oh, how should I not burn for eternity and for the marriage ring of rings, the ring of recurrence? Never yet found I the woman by whom I would have children, save it be by this woman that I love, for I love thee, O eternity. For I love thee, O eternity." So he sings of the wheel that Buddha diagnosed as the great misfortune, and that Solomon estimated as the vanity of vanities. Poetical lyricism is more than this. Nietzsche certainly gave a poetic form to what he took to be his illumination, but this was only a summary of the last consequences drawn from modern science, not as method, but rather as mode of world outlook. In fact, according to the positivistic science of the end of the 19th century, the world is the sum total of innumerable combinations of simple particles, atoms. The combinations change endlessly, but that sometime the number of possible combinations of atoms must necessarily reach its limit, and the number of new combinations must be exhausted. Then the previous combinations must repeat themselves. Therefore, there will be sometimes in the future a day in which the exact repetition of today. This is the scientific basis of the eternal return. Belief in the eternal return as a basis not only... So this is like he's like making the eternal return into a very literal, concrete thing, first of all, rather than like a parable or an allegory. And this is like... That's a kind of like a mythic literalism, which is a... This is... for me, mythic literalism is a red flag mark against that when people are really religious and they start getting really concrete about it, like, oh yeah, the eternal turn is actually literally something that exists and will happen. So he's right about that. Like that's no, okay. Like I would play more like maybe the eternal return is like you contemplate this as a hypothetical idea and it motivates you to live a life that you're not going to regret. Not that it's like you're literally gonna be reconstituted to live your exact life again, like in a very concrete, material way. It's kind of like it's kind of like this is my style, anyways, is to promote more of the allegory or the metaphor than this concrete literalism of myth. But this is just a small part, anyways. Belief in the eternal return has a basis not only in the calculation of possible atomic combinations, but the scientific dogma of the quantitative constancy of matter and energy in the world. Nothing disappears, nothing appears in the world. The sum total of matter and energy in the world is constant. I think this is the kind of thing that, like, I could see that for a certain type of person could be like, whoa, dude, this is so cool. But at some point I have to this is kind of what motivated me to read Nietzsche, because I'm gonna have to and so I started with The Gay Science, went to The Birth of Tragedy, went to Deleuze's take on it, and then so with this in mind, by the time I was getting to the end of The Gay Science, I hit upon a certain aphorism which I think is pretty illuminating for, like, not addressing this maybe directly, but at least getting in there and revealing that I think our known friend who wrote the Meditations on the Tarot is mischaracterizing Nietzsche, basically. And so this is The Gay Science, aphorism 373, where Nietzsche, this is called Science as a Prejudice. It follows from the laws of the order of rank that scholars, insofar as they belong to the great spiritual the spiritual middle class, can never catch sight of the really great problems and question marks. Moreover, their courage and their eyes simply do not reach that far. And above all, their needs which led them to become scholars in the first place, their inmost assumptions and desires that things might be such and such, their fears and hopes that come to rest and are satisfied too soon. Take, for example, that pedantic Englishman, Herbert Spencer. Now, for the record, I don't know I don't know anything about Herbert Spencer, and certain people, whatever. We're just going to keep going with this. I don't know. I don't know Herbert Spencer. I'm just going to plow through it. What makes him enthuse in this way, and then leads him to draw a line of hope, a horizon of desirability that even the eventual reconciliation of egoism and altruism, about which he raves, almost nauseates the likes of us. A human race that adopted such Spencerian perspectives as its ultimate perspectives would seem to us worthy of contempt, of annihilation. But the mere fact that he had to experience as his highest hope something that to others appears and may appear only as a disgusting possibility poses a question mark that Spencer would have been incapable of foreseeing. It is no different with the faith with which so many materialistic natural scientists rest content nowadays, the faith in a world that is supposed to have its equivalent and its measure in human thought and human valuations, a world of truth that can be mastered completely and forever with the aid of our square little reason. What? Do we really want to permit existence to be degraded for us like this? Reduced to a mere exercise for a calculator and an indoor diversion for mathematicians? Above all, one should not wish to divest existence of its rich ambiguity. That is a dictate of good taste, gentlemen, and the taste of reverence for everything that lies beyond your horizon. That is the only justifiable interpretation of this world should be one in which you are justified, because when you can continue to work and do research scientifically in your sense, you really mean mechanistically, an interpretation that permits counting, calculating, weighing, seeing, and touching, and nothing more. That is a crudity and a naivety, assuming that it is not a mental illness and idiocy. Would it not be probable that, conversely, precisely the most superficial and external aspect of existence, what is most apparent, its skin and sensualization, would be grasped first and might even be the only thing that allowed itself to be grasped? A scientific interpretation of the world as you understand it might therefore still be one of the most stupid of the most possible interpretations of the world, meaning that it would be one of the poorest in meaning. This thought is intended for the ears and consciences of our mechanists, who nowadays like to pass as philosophers and insist that mechanics is the doctrine of the first and last laws on which all existence must be based on as a ground floor. But an essentially mechanical world would be essentially a meaningless world. Assuming that one estimated the value of a piece of music according to how much it could be counted, calculated, and expressed in formulas, how absurd would such a scientific estimation of music be? What would one have comprehended, understood, or grasped of it? Nothing. And really nothing of what is music in it. So I think this is wonderful, because basically, if you're paying attention to what the point I'm trying to make here is that let's take away the metaphysical, esoterical, tarot card mysticism and just deal with you have this kind of dichotomy between scientific rationalism and the mystical, magical, enchanted universe of like tarot cards and religion and stuff like this, and that you put Nietzsche up. You have this idea of like Nietzsche as somebody. If you listen to what basically, if you try to understand this Wheel of Fortune thing, you have the idea of an infinite number of calculations, and like this idea of a world that is totally reducible to mathematical calculation, right? And that he characterizes Nietzsche as somebody who basically, like, this is the thing, is like, if you understand things mathematically, and this gives you a calculated understanding of how to exploit and control resources and all this kind of stuff and dominate over other people, and to be like, how estimate, like, is it okay if we take over this country, what do we get? We get their oil, we get your gas, we get their minerals, and then so how much if we calculate that, then that gives us enough power to dominate more. And then this sort of like imperial calculating kind of, people are trying to say, like, characterize Nietzsche, because he got so popular with the Nazis, as just being like, there is no higher truth other than this brutal, like, calculated, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like Nietzsche is characterized as being like mischaracterized as being like a Machiavellian dark triad, like there is no truth except for what you make of it, so we're going to steal all your resources, kill all your people, then we'll write history and tell you the stories, and then all this kind of stuff. And that is precisely nihilism, right? Because there is no truth aside from you just bullshitting and like what we can calculate and then steal for ourselves or whatever, and then you hoard the resources, and then, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, there's this kind of like, that mechanical dominance is nihilism. And then if you actually read fucking what Nietzsche says, is he says that is a meaningless world devoid of meaning, right? And that the whole thing that I think this Christian Meditations on the Tarot mischaracterizes Nietzsche as a guy who's entirely promoting a mechanistic dominance hierarchy, right? And the whole point is that Nietzsche is saying that would be a nihilistic, meaningless world, because you're giving all of your human ability over to the machine, right? And Nietzsche, this is also, so like, if that's not enough on its own, it's really interesting when you put it in the modern context where now everybody's concerned about artificial intelligence, right? And one of the big controversies is AI art, or the idea of I mean, I don't know if it's even really, it's a kind of like a fake controversy, because I don't think anybody who really likes music is really all that concerned about like that AI music making is going to be so good that like people are just going to listen to machine music, right? And the thing is, Nietzsche here is getting, like, it's also kind of funny though, because there's something, Nietzsche does have a bit of a blind spot, because one of the I was kind of like, it came up at the dinner table. I'm at least relieved that my sister is kind of like expressing that she doesn't want to get a phone that has all the AI in it, and that she's like that you know, like, 'cause sometimes, like maybe 10 years ago, there's a certain tension where I was kind of worried that my sister was like going to buy all these like Amazon home smart products, or that, like, you know, your whole family is less critical and they're just going to give themselves over to this like AI Jeff Bezos Amazon machine or whatever. And now it's like, I think people, like the average person is a bit more hip to it, that like maybe it's not a good idea. But there's this kind of problem, because there's this idea of the way they advertise AI, where you've got your Android phone and you're like in the grocery store, and the AI is like this thing that's in your phone, and you can like show it, like you can ask, or no, it's like the thing is like you could add, it's not really that the AI is even like, there's a whole many layers of problems with this, right? Because they're advertising it as if you don't know the difference between cilantro and parsley, and you ask your phone to differentiate cilantro and parsley for you because you can't do this yourself, and it's handy to have this thing that's in the world that you like bring around with you as you do stuff, right? And I think it's kind of interesting, because Nietzsche is like talking about like the mechanical calculation as this thing that happens in a bunch of guys sitting around at desks in a stuffy room that are totally disconnected from actually being out there in the world doing stuff. And that it's like, there's something about it, like if you were an actual, like the musician who writes your own songs and performs them in front of an audience and goes to the open mics and does all this kind of stuff, the idea of a machine doing this in a vacuum, like as if you've got a bunch of guys, like a bunch of mathematicians with calculators who put all the lyrics you wrote into a little like number grid, and they were gonna like, oh, we're just gonna like scramble all your songs that you wrote, and we're gonna come up with a calculation, so you don't have to go to the open mic every week and like deal with that fucking bullshit. Like, so we have a machine, all the discomfort of real human experience we can take out and make a machine do it for you. Like Nietzsche, like are you kidding? Like, what a joke, right? It's like, and we live in the dumbest fucking, like, the fact that anybody would even take that to be like serious is stupid. And then the fact that you're like, oh well, okay, instead of it being a bunch of dudes in a room working it out on like mathematical notations on a sheet of paper. It's a little thing you take around as a phone, and you can like ask it questions in the grocery store. But the thing is, it's like at the same time, your thing that you're asking questions in the grocery store is going to be like, oh, well, based on your consumer profile, we're going to change all the prices around. So if you do things that we like, we'll give you a deal. If you vote for a political party, we're going to make your you're going to punish you with more expensive stuff, right? Like that. And they were entering this kind of techno dystopia where people are going to be so fucking stupid because they can't differentiate between coriander and parsley. They're going to go to the grocery store, and all of a sudden the fucking prices are going to skyrocket through the roof, and they're going to be like, oh, I'm an idiot. Now they know exactly how stupid I am and exactly all the ways they can exploit all my weaknesses and my stupidities and my blind spots, and I'm just giving it over to them. And like, meanwhile they're like, oh, here, discount on the latest iPhone 16 that's all upgraded with like all the AI to just like make you into our little bitch slave, and like so that like we're literally like, it's like we're literally living in a world where it's like we have an abundance of food resources, but we have to be like, oh, we have so much resources we don't know how to do with. Let's build a huge data center so that we have like, you walk into a grocery store where everything is affordable, and then we determine who the fucking dumbass is, and then we stamp fucking loser on their head, and then charge them. So then they come home and they can't pay rent, and they get kicked out on the street, and we kill them basically, right? Like, this is how fucking stupid it is. But we disguise the killer robot with like some helpful thing that's gonna like help you buy groceries, but really you're just letting everybody know you're a fucking moron, right? So I sorry for like, I have a certain kind of like. Yeah, I mean, I will. Okay, maybe the Zeitgeist is with me at least. I've got my back to the wind with this particular resentment against AI and AI art. But it's so funny because it's like the people mischaracterize Nietzsche as being a nihilist who says there is no meaning. So why not just make a bunch of computers that make music? And this is actually literally the opposite thing Nietzsche is saying. And it's like, this is why it's also funny. Nietzsche is saying at the end of this book is like, what if people misunderstand me? Yeah, like, okay, if you read some of these books, I think a hell of a lot of people have misunderstood him, right? So it's like there's some kind of thing where I've like, but if you actually take the time to read it for yourself, it's not always what other people portray it to be, and there's a lot of confusion around this, and I'm like, so I finally, by reading The Gay Science, I've sorted it out, but this is also, unfortunately, this puts a strike against the the meditations on the tarot book for me. And there's this is the kind of the problem is that like by trying to approach esotericism and like spiritual groups, it creates this like, whatever. It's like probably a common thing. I met somebody who got really into the Buddhists for a while, and by trying to like if you get really serious about dealing with the Buddhists, eventually you're just like, well, fuck this. Maybe I got it. Like she ended up becoming like a political protester because there's this kind of thing where like the Buddha, like the real Alan Watts thing is like, you don't, like, it's better to just let the muddy water of the stream clear itself out rather than you getting involved and trying to solve the problem for it, right? But like, I think there are certain styles of Buddhism are so detached from that kind of involvement that like the part of you that doesn't agree with that is just like, and I think that I get the same thing from like this Christian mysticism thing where they're so dead set against like Friedrich Nietzsche and Karl Marx and Sigmund Freud that it just like creates this like counter pressure that pushes me further in that direction. And then I have to at least find out for myself and come to like, not let some other person solve the problem for you. I have to investigate and see and it seems to be like a total mischaracterization of the problem, right? And so for this reason, I think Nietzsche is basically mischaracterized. And it's like, there's also kind of interesting when you combine the whole like, one of the, I don't know if I necessarily want to get too far into like Lacan, but there's this whole idea of Lacan signifying chain, and this idea that like every person, you see this how in the way that AI works, because it's basically just a chain of associations that are just, sometimes the associations are right, sometimes they're wrong, but you just have this thing that spits out chains of associations, right? And the thing is that the problem with Nietzsche is that there's a whole system of associations around him that just don't seem like they're accurate, right? It's just like they're just so the little problem about this is like the virtue of like the good, the beautiful, the true is that it's not that like anybody can just make up their own signifying chain. There should be one that is more anchored onto the actual innate, tangible, real truth of like I'm not a solipsist that the world is just whatever you think it is. That there is a actual literal truth, and that some signifying chains are more accurate than others, right? And if you have a signifying chain that says Nietzsche is a anti-Semite, you're probably wrong. If you have a signifying chain that says Nietzsche is a German, you're definitely wrong. If you have a signifying chain that says Nietzsche is somebody who is in favor and a promoter of a mechanistic material domination of the world, apparently, or like if you're into somebody who says that there is no meaning, so you might as well just get machines to make the music for you. Like there's all he's used as like a boogeyman, like scarecrow straw man, basically. Like you're like taking this like mock image of Nietzsche and stuffing him with all your straw and setting him up to be like, oh no, don't do that because this guy is like a big, like he's a villain and he made the Nazis do bad stuff. But it's like if you actually read him, that's not what he's saying, right? So there's a kind of Nietzsche's exciting because I mean there's also of course there is some legitimate stuff that I wouldn't agree with. That I would, but I'm with them on this one. Aphorism 373, I think it's a good one, and I think it's a good rebuttal to the Wheel of Fortune chapter in Meditations on the Tarot. And it's also kind of funny because if you really want to get creative with this, you could also extend this to stuff like the blockchain, where the blockchain is kind of like this recursive loop of infinite calculations that is like becomes a control structure, right? Of a mechanistic computer control structure that like you're gonna have all your banking, all your accounting is gonna be transferred to this decentralized blockchain, and like there's all these tech bros that are like, if we control the blockchain, we control the world, and then like the Christian thing is like that's the dumbest fucking, or like the funny thing is that like if the Christians are like the Nietzsche would love this. Nietzsche would just be, let's exploit the fuck out of it because there's no meaning, right? But if you listen to Nietzsche, he's like, that's the dumbest fucking form of reality possible. Why the fuck it's like but nobody read Nietzsche. Don't read him, because if you do so, it means you hate women. You're a misogynist, and it's like, okay, like, and like, have fun with your Fitbit. Thanks. Bye.